Hello, everyone. Welcome to Concordia University's Force-Space. Thank you for joining us for today's event, the first in a series celebrating Concordia's first Research Impact Award recipients. The title of today's event is Bringing Back Books, Promoting Book Reading in a World Gone Screen Crazy. To help situate you, we are streaming to YouTube live from Force-Space, and we are located here on unceded Indigenous lands in Tiohtià:ke, Montreal. At Force-Space, we work with our university community to help mobilize knowledge, co-creating daily activities that examine research questions, projects, things in development across the university. We're running today's event as a live stream Zoom meeting. So those of you joining us there, if you have any comments or questions, please add those into the chat. We'll do our best to get those over to our panelists. Those of you here in the space, it's kind of the same thing. If you have any questions, just raise your hand. We'll bring a microphone over to you so that everyone can hear. Okay. With that, it's now my pleasure to pass things over to the Associate Vice President, Research of the Office of Vice President, Research, Innovation, and Impact, Monica Mulrennan. Monica, it's great to have you.
Thank you, Doug. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us here today for what I'm sure will be a very engaging discussion on the many benefits of book reading for kids of all ages, an event perfectly timed for to inspire our holiday gift list, no doubt. So today's event, as Doug mentioned, is tied to the inauguration of the Concordia University Research Impact Awards program. This award, created by the Office of the Vice President, Research, Innovation and Impact, celebrates the diverse ways in which research and research creation contributes both scientific progress as well as broader societal benefits. We're thrilled to highlight the work of Sandra Martin-Chang, one of 5 recipients this year for this prestigious award, and to recognize the exceptional impact of her research on reading and writing development in children and adults. So the Research Impact Awards reflect this growing attention to research impact in response to an urgency to contribute to societal challenges and real world challenges more broadly, as well as to rebuild trust in science. And this focus on impact is transforming really how research is being recognized and funded, assessed, rewarded. I mean, it's really an interesting moment. And a key example of this is reflected in the very recent decision by the Tri-Agency and the FRQ, so the federal and the provincial, the key funding, research funding bodies, and their decision to adopt a narrative CV format for their competitions. So unlike traditional CVs, these narratives offer more structured, descriptive accounts of a researcher, as well as their contributions, their skills and experiences, as well as an account of their impacts. So to align with these evolving expectations on researchers, Concordia is committed to new ways of supporting and recognizing researchers. In addition to the Research Impact Awards, we have recently launched a Pathways to Impact initiative, which is a support service that's really focused around 7 established pathways to impact that integrates the resources and the expertise available through cross-unit collaboration involving Force-Space, the library, the Office of Community Engagement, D3, and others. So we're also building on and adapting different existing frameworks for impact to support individual researchers and research teams to really build their narratives, their evidence-based narratives. So for more information on that, check out, you can just Google Concordia Pathways to Impact, and there's a description there of that initiative. But today, today's event is really a kickoff for our celebration of research impact. In the new year, we'll be launching a Research Impact Award Day kind of series, a series of gatherings designed to foster a culture of intentional impact, as well as to discuss and workshop strategies to support it. So watch out for more information coming shortly on that. And just finally, I'd like to extend our gratitude to Advancement for their support of the Research Impact Award Days. Thanks to Prem Suryakumar, to Brett Cox, Eli Friedland from the Office of Research for their amazing work on both the Pathways to Impact framework as well as the Research Impact Awards. Thanks to Doug and the Fourth Space team for hosting us. Congrats again to Sandra, and thank you to you and to the Concordia Literacy Lab for organizing today's event. So over to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So thanks everyone for coming, and thanks to everyone who's joining us over Zoom. I'd like to start today with just some hardline scientific facts about reading for pleasure. And I know that scientific facts sound about as far from reading for pleasure as you can get. But I like this quote. So I have a quote up here. Building a culture and ecology of reading within a school is the collective responsibility of all staff. Support must be offered to help staff develop sophisticated understandings of the concept of reading for pleasure. Potentially, the term can create confusion as it is perceived by some educators as an optional extra, in contrast to the serious work of learning, thus perpetuating the notion that fostering a love from reading is somehow less rigorous than explicit reading instruction. So I want to say that at our lab, and I have some students here, which is really exciting, they know that we really like explicit instruction. So we're not arguing against that. We think it's really important, and we think that having good early instruction creates a foundation where later kids can go on to become good readers and love reading, okay? So we think these things develop in tandem, not separately. However, I want to go into this idea of serious learning. Okay, and why can we call reading for pleasure, like reading about witches and magicians and dragons, romance? How do we get off calling that serious work? All right. Well, because we have decades of research saying that people who read for pleasure, which is probably good for the people in this room, go on to have better hardcore skills in things like vocabulary, reading fluency, reading comprehension. They're better at spelling. They have more world knowledge. And in terms of developing, the softer skills, we know that people who read more for pleasure are better things like theory of mind, empathy, they're less prejudiced. So really, long list of things that are really, really important to society. So I got you guys here, right, by saying, I think our ad said something like, kids these days are more depressed, less social, and need more academic help. And we implied that reading books could fix this. So the question is, was I exaggerating? Okay, if so, I did a good job because I got some people here, so that's good, okay? But I'm gonna say that no, we're not exaggerating because we have work from people in the States, right? A 2024 study by Sun et al. And they followed over 10,000 students, right, who were between 9 and 11 years old, and they followed them for 2 years. And what they found was that people who were early adopters for reading for pleasure reported better mental well-being. They reported less stress, less depression, improved attention, reduced aggression, less rule-breaking behavior, and they also noticed cortical changes, okay? So actual structural changes in the brain around areas that involve the visual system and verbal, right? Verbal skills. So that makes sense, right? I've heard that people say if exercise was a pill, everyone would take it. And that's the way I feel about reading for pleasure. So I'm a little bit of a zealot about reading for pleasure. But I think that if we could bottle it up, everyone would be ordering, what reading for pleasure gives you. Unfortunately, I don't know, or fortunately, both exercise and reading for pleasure are things that you need to develop a bit of a habit. You need a little bit, you need encouragement to do it. So that's why I brought these guys in. I want to turn it over to them. So I'm going to start with Giselle. She's going to pick up the mic. We don't always speak with mics, although we might after this. We might decide we like the mic after this. But I first met Giselle when she was working with home educators and promoting book reading. So Giselle, can you tell us a little bit about that program and also about your library?
Yes, of course. So thank you so much, Sandra, for having me. It's a pleasure to be part of this panel today to talk about the pleasure for reading. Is this good? Yes, awesome. So I am the Programs Manager at the Fraser Hickson Institute, which was established in 1885 as Montreal's first private but free to the public library. Today, it works as a outreach program, and the focus is on early literacy through the flagship project, Mini Biblioplus. So we partner with different daycares, community centers, hospitals, basically any organization that works with children from 0 to 8 years old to promote early literacy. We set up mini libraries in those centers. The families, the children, the educators, social workers, everybody have access to those books. We also facilitate workshops for parents and educators on early literacy, and we train volunteers to conduct story time animation in our partners' locations. I had the pleasure of meeting and working with Dr. Martin-Chang on a new project at Fraser Hickson. And this project is an evidence-based training program for home daycare educators, as she mentioned before. And this program aims to assist these educators in implementing early literacy strategies through the use of books and storytime animations. And the training is also followed by coaching to help educators apply with what they've learned during the training.
So I loved that project so much because I had every intention of saying that I was too busy. I could not get involved. And then they told me how great it was, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I have to get involved in this. So not only do they teach daycare workers how to read books to kids, but then they send them home with like book bags full of books, right? Like, and they change the books all the time. Anyway, I just love this program. And I'll plug some of the research that we've done that relates to that, showing that when kids are read to more when they are young, they go on to become teenagers who read more for pleasure. And it's through that reading for pleasure when they're older that they see benefits in things like decoding and spelling, all right, and reading comprehension. So Brittany Tremblay was the lead investigator on that. But yeah, so the things that you're doing have really like long-term impacts, right?
Yes, for sure. So research shows that the reading to children from birth has a significant impact on their development. So it helps them learn new words, stay focused, and also spark their imagination. It also creates special bonding moments with the adults who read to them. So this is really special. During the first 1,000 days, about the first years in a child's life, the brain is growing quickly and forming all these connections based on the experiences that they have. Reading books and sharing stories boosts the memory, language, and understanding. And so it's really important to start as early as possible to read to them so we can tap into this fantastic period of growth and learning in a child's life.
And what tips did you give during your program?
Yeah, so this is my favorite part, actually. I could spend all day talking about tips and tricks and, fun things to do when we're reading to children. I would say that I could just mention, it has to be fun, it has to be relaxed. When you're reading to children, you have to be expressive. So, using all these different voices for the different characters. Also, the story has to be made engaged and fun. Go ahead and try to read to a toddler if you're not engaged enough, or, and then you let me know if it works. But basically, that's what it is. Also, encourage interaction when you're reading the stories. The interactions that happen during story time, they are as important as the act of reading to the children. And create a routine around books. So it can be at that time, this is a given, but also if you have time throughout the day, it would be very interesting and good for the children to have that moment to connect with books, because consistency builds a love for reading and reinforces the habit.
Okay, and are these tips that you use with your own kids?
Oh yeah, I use these tips and much more. We have books around the house, so we have books in the living room, we have books in the basement, we have books even in the bathroom. You can find books in my house. They are very accessible, so my son can, have books anytime he likes. We also visit the library often and bookstores. We give books as gifts to our friends and families as well. I let him take the lead when we're doing story time. So, I always go with his preferences. He has his favorite characters. And if I see that sometimes he's not really engaged in a particular story, we use books as a game. We use it for fun. So, we can start playing a game of I Spy with My Little Eye or Look and Find. Sometimes we create different dialogues with the characters. So we don't have to read books per se every time. So we do a little bit of everything. But for me, it's also important that I show that I'm excited about story time. Not only because reading is important, but also that it creates memorable moments for us as a family as well.
Beautiful. So when we were talking about this, you talked about a quote that you liked, and I think that sums up kind of the storybook reading. Yeah?
Yes. So the quote is, children are made readers in the lap of their parents. It's just to say how powerful is the role of parents in establishing a love for reading in young children. And not only parents, but I would say educators, everybody that has a contact with the young ones.
Beautiful. I love that. Okay, and now Maya, who is the bookstore owner for Baba Books, is going to be showing us a few books, storybooks that she thinks will be popular this season. So we're going to maybe get Stephanie to hold the book. So, yeah.
All right, so
Mike.
Okay. So the first title is Santa's First Christmas by Mac Barnett and Sydney Smith. And Sydney Smith is a Canadian illustrator. He's the first Canadian to win the Hans Christian Andersen, which is an international award for children's book illustrators. And so we're really proud of him. And perhaps if we could just look at a couple of pages. The premise of the story is that a polar bear comes and asks, how does Santa celebrate Christmas? And his elves say, well, he sleeps in for half an hour, and then he goes back to starting to make toys for the children for the rest of the year. And so the polar bear puts the idea, well, maybe we can do something to make Santa's Christmas special. And
Nice.
So there's all sorts of ideas that they come up with. So the next book is Harry Potter Christmas, and it's Harry and the Weasleys stay for Christmas, and maybe we can flip it open, and because Harry doesn't want to go home, he doesn't have a great family situation, and so it's what they do at Hogwarts to celebrate Christmas, and Harry gets a very important present in this book.
Oh, lovely.
A present from his father.
Aw.
All right, and then the next one is Skating Wild on an Inland Sea. And the inland sea is Lake Superior. The illustrator, Todd Stewart, is a Montrealer, and this book has won the Governor General's and other awards. It's a beautifully, beautifully illustrated book, and it's the story of two children waking up to the sound of the crackling of the ice on Lake Superior. And so they eat their breakfast and run down to the lake, and on the way down they see various animals, and they end up skating on the lake. And it's just, the illustrations are exquisite, and the language also is very poetic. And then I don't know if Oliver Jeffers is a sort of all-time favorite with children. And Where to Hide a Star, these characters all appear in other Oliver Jeffers books. And the story is about they're playing hide and seek, and the star disappears. And they're really surprised because the star is usually not very good at hiding. And then the star ends up very far away, and various characters come together to help bring the star back.
I noticed this is a signed copy.
Yes. I own an independent children's bookstore, and as a perk for having an independent store, we get special autographed books and things that don't go out to the chains. So, and finally, anyone who knows me knows I'm a dog lover. So Barbaros tends to have more dog books than cat books. And Elkie is Not My Dog is a story about a stray dog who moves into a community and how the children in the community help feed the dog, play with the dog, and take care of the dog. And it's just a lovely story about community building, and it's about dogs. So, yeah.
Fantastic, thank you. We're going to go actually to Kathleen now. So I love how this quote talks about how children are made readers, and I'm hoping some of that reading is being done in school. So you are with the Ministry of Education right now, and you're on loan.
That's right. So I'm in my 3rd year of a loan of service to the ministry in ELA programs, but I am actually from Lester B. Pearson School Board. I'm 7th year as a consultant.
Okay, and what grade did you teach?
I taught for 17 years in the classroom, anywhere from kindergarten to grade 6. I especially loved the littles, and my niche was in grade 3.
Okay, so you said that you were going to put, for some of our teachers to be here and some people joining online, some teacher moves for increasing a love of reading. So do you want to start us off on those teacher moves?
Absolutely. So this was a really fun invitation because it got me to really reflect on what were the things that I did that I felt really worked, put all that together, talked to my teacher friends, students, my own kids, and looked at the research too to see, like, does all that line up? And it does. So that's really exciting. So move number 1, environment. The first thing when kids walk into your classroom is they should feel books and see books. They're on display. There's all kinds of genres. There's different levels. It's super welcoming. They know that they're allowed to touch them. They can take them. They don't have to ask. It needs to feel like it belongs to them. Basically, it has to scream, "We love books." And then hopefully that spills out into the entire school, right? So there should be interactive bulletin boards in the school of kids telling and celebrating the books they've just read and saying, "You should try." And it shouldn't be all, perfectly cut out and like printed papers. It should be really coming from them, self-created, celebrating in different ways, shapes, and forms. So it's really authentic. And just establish routines and practice in terms of getting that to be a habit, which leads me into teacher move number 2. Make reading a daily ritual. Not a single day should ever go by that reading didn't happen. And yes, reading's going to happen in your regular courses and whatnot, but there needs to be read-alouds every day. They need to be fun, engaging. It's woven into the fabric, right? And the kids, of course, are doing some shared reading and peer reading and independent reading. And it should be a lot of fiction. We know that nonfiction is important, but fiction is essential, just like what you were speaking to before about empathy and rich vocabulary and those things. And that brings us into move number 3, which is let them choose. So voice and choice are huge, crucial, and we have to honor their choices. So no book shaming, right? If the kids love Dogman and Captain Underpants, that's amazing because they're excited. And then you have to really listen to them and be like, "Oh, wow, that's what happens? Oh, wow." And you've got to encourage them because they're reading, and that's creating the passion, and that's creating the habit and the drive. What we know from surveys is that what drives kids for books is laughter, things that make them laugh, adventure, and they also really like characters who are overcoming challenges. And so in terms of getting to know your students when they first come in, and then throughout the year,
January, maybe, would be a
keep,
good time.
keep checking in. Yeah, this will be great right after Christmas, so what are you interested in? And then you go and do that legwork and talk to bookstore owners and talk to librarians about what are the new great books coming out that deal with these topics, and bring that into the kids so that they see what's out there, because that's really motivating. And get kids, like I was saying, to share their books with each other. Carve out time, whether that's like right before the bell rings or just as you're lining up, or people should have time. And you can be modeling it too, right? So sharing the books that you love and that you've just read. And one great way is to just grab a book, read the first page. You might already know, you're like, "Oh, if I go to chapter 2, paragraph 3, that's gonna get them." And then you just read that, and then you watch little eyes light up, and then you go, "Oh, did you want to borrow this one?" And then they get it, and then the others make a list, and they line up, and then they pressure each other. "Are you done yet? It's my turn." So you just really create this like culture of reading in the classroom, that we're all readers. You can also just be reading chapter titles, even that can be enough sometimes. But basically, in the classroom, you've got the independent reading going on, but you have a lot of teacher-led reading going on too. And that brings us to teacher move number 4, classic versus contemporary. No, not versus, I'm so sorry, and. It's not a competition. It's really important. It's both. So classics are amazing. I love that we still talk about Charlotte's Web. I had some really excited grade 5ers the other day saying, oh my gosh, I'm reading Roald Dahl. My teacher read me this one. Now I'm reading the whole series. That's beautiful and that's wonderful. But the contemporary, the world that kids live in today, they need to be exposed to that as well. So we want the Harry Potter, and we want the invention of Hugo Cabret, and we want the wild robot, and we want everything that's on this table. I love everything you've brought in. It's essential that they get to see themselves in diverse books of today and stories of today as well. I think that brings us well to number 5, which is build motivation through success. Kind of connects to what you model, right, and what you're showing them. There's kind of a myth that says meet kids where they are when you're reading. I disagree. Well, the research disagrees, not just me. It's not quite it. You need to just reach it a little bit further. It's a little bit above, because then they get to progress. Whatever you're sharing with them is what allows you to pre-teach tricky or rich vocabulary. Not only that, but it shows the kids that all that effort they're putting into all of that explicit learning of reading, that's going to help them to be more fluent, and then they can start decoding that on their own. It doesn't have to just be read to them anymore. So it's showing them that it's worth it. And so, of course, we read the picture books and the novels.
Yes.
Not one or the other, it's both. And so finally, it shouldn't come as a surprise that my teacher move number 6 is model the joy of reading. So it's not enough to say, oh, reading is so much fun, make sure you do it.
For you.
They have to see you doing it, right? We can't just tell, we have to do. Your passion has to be visible. I doubt this will be true for anyone in the room or anyone listening, but if ever you're not really a reader and you're not really excited about books, I do think is like your moral obligation to pretend that you are with your students. You have to show them passion. It has to be visible. And it's because it's not just a skill, it's pleasure, and that's what's going to get them hooked. So you just got to walk the talk, basically. Walk the talk. Yeah.
And because what we're hearing is really depressing, actually. So again, if you're looking at the research out there, it's not great. So from 2024, they were saying that like almost half of 13-year-olds are reading for pleasure maybe like one time a year, and a third of people who are 13 are never reading for pleasure, like not once at all year. And when I'm telling you about all of these fantastic benefits, those are benefits that people are missing out on. So my question is, if our pre-service teachers in the crowd, or if people who are joining us and the parents, if they do things like this, do you think it matters? Like, do you think we can turn this bus around a little bit?
Absolutely, 100%. And maybe we don't get every single kid, but we certainly have to try. And I've got a ton of success stories. I'll tell you one of my favorites. It happened on an open night years ago. Father comes in and pulls me to the side and says, I have to tell you a story. And I said, I'm all ears. And he says, I almost got so mad at my son the other night because it was way past his bedtime, and I see the light on in his room, and so I went to go get angry, and then something told me, hold on, just take a look first. And he peeks in, and he goes, I can't believe it. He was reading. He was reading. I've never seen him do that. And so I get all like, so he goes, credit goes to you, because whatever you're doing got him to want to do that. I will tell you, I was doing all of those things, and I will tell you that for that child, the book was the invention of Hugo Cabret, because it was enough. You've got that beautiful blend of images, and it's a novel. It just hovers on that line, and that made him go, you know what? It's worth it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to. So is he still reading today? I don't know, but we have to believe that if we're trying and doing all those right things, that it's going to work out. And I need to say something for the parents, because I hear everything you say, and parents are going to go, but I did all that, and I still have teenagers that don't read. And I will say I have one teenager who devours books, and I have another who kind of like started to let go around grade 3. And my theory about grade 3 in particular is that our decoding skills don't quite keep up with the level of complex text that they really want to get into. There's this like gap that's hard to overcome. So it can't just be the parents. I'm sure that dad was doing everything to get his kid to read. So it takes a village. It takes the parents and the teachers and the peers, the kids talking about books, because that's what finally got my youngest to pick up a book again. It was everything, everything.
Love it.
And it was her peer group, and it was book talks on social media. Those are great too.
Yeah.
So we have to try, we have to believe, and I do think it works.
I love that. So that is reading in school. Now I want to introduce Stephanie Kozak, who I'm very proud of because she got her PhD in our lab, so it's very fun. Dr. Stephanie Kozak. And you ran a literacy camp this summer.
Yeah, so I work for a tutoring company called Monarch Tutoring. I'm an English tutor, and they approached me last year about doing a camp that was focused on reading, just reading and writing, which is my dream come true. So I said yes. They gave me access to kids. They gave me a library to work from. They gave me camp counselors to support me. And it was amazing. It was called Page Turners, and really what we focused on was exploring reading and writing, but with the priority placed on having fun. So the idea was to get kids a little bit more excited about the school year to come if they had some time with books that was really just about having fun.
And how did you make it fun?
Oh, we did so many things. So everything that you guys have been saying is stuff that we've put into our camp. So one of the first things that we did was we surveyed our students before they came in to see kind of what books that they were into. So we pre-selected a bunch of those books. And then we planned for way more activities than we had time for, which allowed us to be super flexible. So we could see, one activity was really super fun for them, and one they weren't so into. We were able to kind of be flexible in that sense. And then we did any kind of activity that seemed fun for me. That's what we did. So things like we wrote song parodies, and we had somebody come and choreograph them with the kids after.
I love that.
We did plays and skits, and then I brought in my sewing machine and made costumes for them. We did character scrapbooks, so if they were writing stories, we had them create scrapbooks or even playlists about what their characters might like. Sometimes when we were reading stories, which we did a lot, we read stories every day, which was always fun, especially for the oldest that I thought would not be into it. They loved it the most. But we would visit locations and settings on Google Maps to see what it looked like in real life. We had lots of conversations about books. And then at the end of the week, we celebrated by having an author's showcase. So all of our students who wrote projects were able to present them to their parents at the end of the week.
Oh, that's fantastic. So one of the things that we teach, because Steph has also taught some of the courses here, so one of the things that we teach is that the last step in the reading process often involves the first step in the writing process. So what kinds of writing do you have them do?
Honestly, we let them do whatever they wanted to, which was great because we had such a wide variety of projects at the end. So one student was very into Star Wars, and she created a whole book about different Star Wars characters that existed, but also some that she invented. I had one student who wrote a comedy routine that he performed for the parents at the end. One student was very into nonfiction, and she presented a little piece about the writing process at the end of the week, which was adorable. And then we had, fairy tales and adventures. Some of them were very dramatic and epic. So
Hard to imagine from kids. But now I know you're really close to your niece and nephew.
Yeah.
So are there things that you do with them that promote the love of reading?
They're 13 and 15, so they're that teenagers that are a little bit, we have to kind of work with them to get them reading, so I try. This year, I have just organized a cousins book club for them and for me and for my cousins and their cousins. And the idea came because my husband is working on a film adaptation to a book that I'm unfortunately not allowed to say because he signed an NDA and everything. But I picked that book so that after they finished reading the book with us, they get to have front row seats to the actual adaptation. It's going to be a big production, so it's going to be really fun.
So for those of us who don't have husbands that work in Hollywood.
You can borrow mine.
But yes, so yet, we don't have Hollywood husbands yet, okay? You can still kind of build off this. So if you know something's coming out and it's going to be on Netflix or it's going to be made into a movie, you can make a point of reading the book first. So in our family, we always read the book first, right? And we're trying to uphold that. So The Wild Robot is coming out and we're rushing to read it before it comes out. We did it with 13 Reasons. When it was going crazy in high school, we read the book first, and almost always the book is better, okay? Very rarely the book is not better. But some people can go backwards too, where they see the movie and then they go backwards and they read. I could never do that personally. I like reading the book and then watching. But I know we're gonna talk to you later again, but is there anything else you wanna say about just books?
Yeah, I mean, I could talk for hours about books, but I'll keep it short for you. One of the things that I really strive to do when I work with children is to instill with them this partnership in the reading process. So the things that I love about reading is something that they're going to love about reading too. So to give a concrete example, I am somebody who loves rereading books. I find it very comforting. I find it very relaxing, especially in these crazy times that we live in. And I know that that's like an argument that parents sometimes have with their kids. I know my parents had it with me because I read the Babysitter Club books for way longer than I should have.
No book shaming.
So they say.
No book shaming.
But I think that's something that comes up when I talk to parents too. Oh, my kid's reading the same books. I think that's totally fine. I think.
Well, we know it's fine
Yeah,
because
we know it's
research
fine.
that we've done here
Yes, exactly.
to plug Concordia, we're proud of
Yes.
Concordia too. Work that we've done here has shown that kids who reread, and not kids, like university
yeah,
students
yeah.
who reread books do better on like
Yeah.
SAT-like scores.
Correct.
Right? So reading new books, liking reading, rereading,
Yeah.
being compelled to read a whole series, starting a kid on one
Yeah.
book and then encouraging them to read a whole I was at your store the other day and a mom said, I'd like to buy the next 3 books because I want to give the next 3 books, for a birthday because my child loved the first one. Like all of
Yeah.
these things.
And there's just one more thing I wanted to add, which is sometimes there's this idea that kids are supposed to be reading at a certain age level, which like you talked about. And I think sometimes we just get stuck. Sometimes we need things that are easy, right? Sometimes you need something that is not going to stress you or make you think too hard. And what that looks like is reading books that look like they're below your level. And I think that that's totally okay too. I think kids should be allowed to read whatever is fun for them because I want to read what is fun for me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that's fantastic. And now Maya's going to tell us about some new books that are just out right now that I can't wait to get my hands on.
So this one I just,
Maya, yep.
yes, this one I just finished this weekend. It's by Nick Lake, and it's The House with a Dragon in It. And it's the story of a young girl who's in the foster system, and this is the 5th house she's in, so she's not too happy, and she's acting out. So one Sunday afternoon, while they're having lunch, they hear a crash, and there's a huge hole in the living room. There's a sinkhole. And sinkhole is very important because there's something in that hole. There's not supposed to be any sinkholes in this part of England, but there is. And of course, well, I'm not giving anything away by saying there's a dragon, but there's a dragon in it. So it's beautifully written, and the interaction between the characters is amazing. Nick Lake is one of my favorite writers, and I'm so happy that he's writing. He used to write for teens, and this is his 2nd book for what I call middle grade. So good for sort of 8 to 10-year-olds.
Amazing.
This is another recently translated book. This book won Best Book Award in the Netherlands 2 years ago, and it's since been translated, and it's a story, both of these books have some illustration in them, and it's a story of an Afghani family that has made their way to the Netherlands, but they've had a long wait. They were 5 years waiting to get papers, and they still didn't get them. They have to go into hiding. Anyways, starts off day 1. They finally have a house. They have their papers. They're living in the Netherlands, and the youngest in the family says, I think this house needs a pet. And the pet ends up being a rabbit, and the rabbit is instrumental in the family's dealing with all the problems that they've had and have bottled inside themselves. I've been to Bletchley Park. This is called Bletchley Riddle, and it's by Ruta Sepetys and Steve Scheineken, and they're both top writers for young adults and historical fiction, which I really love. So it's about, at Bletchley Park, they went into the universities and recruited like 18, 19-year-olds. If they were good in math, they were brought in to solve part of the Enigma project. And so it's a historical story, but it's also a story about 2 siblings, and it's a mystery as well, because the mother has disappeared. This is Alice Hoffman's When We Flew Away, and it's a fictional story of the 3 years before Anne Frank and her family went into hiding. So it sort of fleshes out the story of what made Anne the writer that she was, and the situation in the Netherlands that led to them being hiding. And so it really, it's amazing imagination of what happened, because of course we don't really know, but there was a lot of research going into it. And then final book is the big hot book this season. It's called Impossible Creatures by Catherine Rundle, and it's got a boy going into another world where all the magical creatures are, and the adventures of I forget his name, Christopher and Mara. And it's a page turner. It goes so quickly, and it's the first of a series.
I love this one. I read it just not long ago, and I loved it. I think it's going to be the next hot thing. So I keep telling people, I think this is going to be the next hot thing. Okay, so now we have some time for some questions. And I'm going to finish up with these guys when we've got about 10 minutes left, but I'm not sure, I'm not keeping time on this thing, but are there time for questions? Yeah? Yeah? And is there anything coming in? Do you want the mic, Mary Ellen? Oh, there's one right there. Look at that.
Okay, we got one on Zoom. The person was wondering, how do you feel about using storybooks that address difficult topics like grief or fear with young children?
Okay, so who would like to?
I'll take that one. I think that you have to always use your professional judgment. I think you have to know who's in your room. That's part of building relationships as a teacher. You have relationships with them. So I'm taking the classroom perspective as opposed to the parent one. As a parent, absolutely, 100%, because you know your audience. As a teacher, you have to know who's there. And I think you have to be not obvious about it. Like, I think you really have to know what you're doing. But the short answer is yes, of course. Because that's what we just said, right? Kids love characters who are overcoming challenges, because that's why it's empathy building. Because you get to wear the skin of someone else. So that's what I would say. I don't know if someone wants to add.
So a researcher from Toronto, right, talks about fiction being like a simulator, like a cockpit simulator, where you can climb inside and practice things, right, but know you're safe. So that's why you can read, that's why so many kids' books, there are no parents, right? Because kids long for that. They long for that independence, but they can have it within the safe confines of their own home with hopefully very loving parents watching over them, but they can experience that freedom. And also some of the books, like The Fall of Freddie the Leaf, which deals with death and grief, is so beautifully written and so much thought has gone into it that chances are it's going to be dealt with a lot more thoughtfully than something that you're going to come up with off the cuff, you know? But yes. Were there other questions?
If anyone in the space has questions, just raise your hand. I can bring a microphone over to you. Oh, we got one.
That's shocking. One of my students has a question.
Hi, I'm the student with the question. As a future teacher, already in school, we're overwhelmed with everything that we need to learn, everything that we need to teach, especially as first-year teachers, everything is brand new. How would you suggest navigating the importance of reading for pleasure as a priority while not bringing other subjects, yeah, that's the question.
There's just always time to read aloud because you kind of can't afford not to. Like, you can't afford not to. And so if it's even just 5 minutes, you know, and the kids are so excited. And the thing is, if you don't have motivation and engagement happening in your classroom, you're not teaching anyways. So that book and that is such a motivational, and you use it as your hook, you use it as your anchor, it's your model text, and it leads you into wherever you wanted to go in science, in math, in ELA, in sentence structure, in periods and capitals, in anything. So if it's the vehicle, then it carries everything. So there's always time.
Okay, good, thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions in the room or on Zoom?
Got one on Zoom, I think.
Okay.
Over to you, Marilyn.
There's another question on Zoom. Do you have recommendations for sports theme books for reluctant readers, like around in secondary school?
I have one that I have given to my reluctant reader cousin, which would be the crossover. Yeah, it's Kwame Alexander, I think. There's the crossover, and there's another one that's, that one's, yeah, there's a soccer-based one, a basketball-based one, and then there's a third one. Yeah, I'm good. I'm going to pass this to you.
I'm sorry, I can't remember the title of
Well-
it. But, sorry, I'm blanking on, there's lots.
There's the
lots.
Screech Owls, right? Screech Owls for hockey. There was one I think called Hothead, which I think was baseball. There's a gorgeous, gorgeous book. It's for older readers, mind you, but we did it one year about baseball. It's like a baseball love story with Mary Poppins. Like, come on now, right? But it's amazing, which I know, but
Yeah, it's called My Most Excellent Year by Steve Kluger.
yeah, and it's really, really good. But you can also just Google it. You can go in and ask, but all of those books are really good. The Screech Owls, it's mysteries around hockey tournaments and like really sophisticated. Oh yeah? Okay.
There's another question.
Okay.
What about the poor readers? How do you get them to love reading?
That is a really, really good question. Do you want to talk about the Matthew effect?
Yeah, I just grabbed the microphone right back. So there's a phenomenon or something that's observable in our reading research that's been termed the Matthew effect, and this comes from Keith Stanovich, who's a Canadian researcher. And the term comes from the Bible. This is the idea of the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. And so what it talks about is the fact that when kids are starting to read, they are all pretty much close in level. So there's a very, very minute difference between what you would call a strong reader and what you would call a reader who require more support. But as time goes on, that gap tends to widen because the kids who don't enjoy reading or who find it difficult are unlikely to practice reading, right? So sometimes we use the analogy of sports, like I hate running, I absolutely hate it. I want to be good at it, but I hate it. So the idea of having to get up and put on my shoes and go running is like the worst thing in the world, and I'm not gonna do it. But in terms of exercise, what I do like is something like Pilates or whatever, right? So the idea of doing that, it's still exercise, but it's good for me. And so that's kind of the approach we want to take with kids. We want to try to build in as much fun as possible, especially for those readers who struggle in the beginning, because the only way to kind of mediate that gap is through practice. Mm-hmm. Is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I do. I want to say that also, interestingly, books like this that we love, and we love reading to kids, are actually have quite like enrich vocabulary normally, which is wonderful for spoken language, but it's really tough for kids to read. So they're actually going to do a lot better when you give them a very short chapter book. I've had people say to me like, oh my goodness, no, they're not ready, they're not ready. But what we know about poor readers, rightly or wrongly, is that when the decoding's weak, they latch on to the context. So they actually do much better reading in a connected passage than they're going to do reading on, like, let's say flashcards or something. So getting them into like really young chapter books, you know, for early readers, they're going to do better. And we want it to just be short and positive. So just 2 pages a night, even setting a timer, like 10 minutes max. And because we want to be building up that competence, right? Competence, autonomy.
Well, and figuring out why they're poor readers and addressing that, right? So where are they tripping up, and what are those explicit foundational skills that need to be worked on in order to bridge that gap, right?
Yep. So you need all
So
of
it's
these
this
things happening
and-
at once.
exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, there's another question, but
Oh, there's one
before-
in the room here.
Oh, I just want, they want to know if all these books mentioned will be listed
Yes.
somehow. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, I just got in, but I was wondering if you guys spoke about how maybe short stories or flash fiction can work into this, because it's like short form content seems to be the way the world is going. So I feel like literature kind of has to adapt to that.
Okay, so I have a two-part answer for you. So some really interesting work has been done in Scotland, where she looks exactly, this Sarah McGowan looks exactly at these questions. And there is something really special about long-form fiction. All right, so there's something special about when we're talking about all these cognitive benefits, about world building in our brains and holding space for something over a long period of time. However, she did note when she was speaking with like adolescents that they like shorter books. So you can almost have a longer piece of fiction broken into shorter books. So we're kind of not matching, but we're catering a little bit to the attention span while also world building over a long period of time. She found that in terms of reading, all of the good things that I said earlier, which was many good things, don't come from reading really short pieces of fiction, and they don't come from like online media things. All right, so that's kind of why we say it in a world gone screen crazy, because we know that the more screen time kids have, like TikTok and Instagram, the more anxious they are, the harder it is to sleep. You know, it's hurting well-being, whereas reading long-form fiction is actually really beneficial. It's helping, it's fighting all of those negative consequences.
Yeah, and so while enjoying and working in, when I was saying classics and contemporary, right? So we should experience that as well as an art and a form of literature. But we know stamina is incredibly important, and we know self-efficacy is incredibly important. And that is the holding of a whole world, what that does. So it's, again, not one or the other.
And okay, so I think I'm getting it's time. So guys, if you had one last thing to say about books and their importance, what would it be?
Right. So read to children in your life at least 10 to 15 minutes every day to build that habit of reading, and the love starts there. Thank you.
And then from there, I'll paraphrase Donna Lynn Miller, author of The Book Whisperer, and say, just don't give up when you have reluctant readers. Keep trying to find that book that will light them up.
All right, I go back to my son, and we were both reading Gordon Corman, and I'd hear him laugh, and I'd say, "Where are you?" So share books, read books that they're reading, so that you can talk about them.
That's kind of what I was going to say too. I think as adults, it's important for us to share what we read and how we feel about reading with our kids. This goes in line with modeling, but also kind of what you were saying a little bit earlier. Sometimes I think adults have a hard time fitting reading into their day, right? So I'm thinking specifically of these pre-service teachers who have huge course loads and who we want them to read, and they say that they don't have time. Kids' books are a great way to get back into reading. It makes you super popular with your students, and it's kind of fun and relaxing. So that would be my suggestion.
And just I don't need this.
That. Sorry.
Just to finish off that, I'd say don't get tricked into thinking that all the good things that you need to do need to be serious. I mean, sometimes what feels best is also what's best for you, and that's for you guys. It's for the students you teach. It's for the kids in your lives. So, like, really do what's fun. We're giving away 5 little thank you packages for people coming out, and we have Gordon Corman in there. He's still a wonderful writer. We have some classics in there. We have some things just to take care of our teachers and our parents in there. So don't leave before we give those away.
Well, speaking of this contemporary world, what about audiobooks, Sandy?
Oh, okay, good. Okay, thank you. So we have ongoing research right now, okay? And if you qualify, we would love it. So scan this code. It will take you to a mini survey. And if you qualify, we have a stipend that we're giving away, $25 for filling out our survey. The survey it's a little long, okay? That's why we pay you for it. But yeah, we would love, we want to know what people are listening to. We want to know what cognitive benefits. I also love listening to books. So we want to know what people are listening to and what they're reading and how those things get correlated together. So thank you, because I always forgot about this. And thank you guys for coming. I really appreciate it. And thank you for the Fourth Space and everybody for making this possible. I think this is a really great message, and we want to get it out to the world.
Thank you, Sandra. Thank you, everyone, for coming in. Thank you for putting together this fantastic panel. Thank all of you for your comments and your questions, also those of you joining us online. Just a quick note to say we're going to close up the live stream and the Zoom right now, but this conversation remains available on our YouTube channel. You want to revisit it, you want to share it, you give it in, write it in a Christmas card for Christmas. I don't know. Anyhow, That's the end for us. Thank you very much for joining us here. Now I go home and curl up with a book or something. Okay, good night.